Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to break down complex research into the knowledge you really need.
That's the goal.
And today we're tackling, well, a pretty huge topic, the first 2 years of life, specifically psychosocial development.
Yeah, it's foundational, isn't it? This is where so much happens so fast. We're talking about how tiny infants become toddlers who are, navigating some really complex emotions and building those first crucial relationships.
Exactly. So for you listening, our aim is to get through this efficiently but thoroughly. We want to map out how emotions emerge, understand temperament, that inborn quality, get a grip on attachment, which is huge, and sort of use the big theories to make sense of it all.
We've got a good stack of research here, findings that really chart these milestones emotionally and socially from birth right up to age 2. It's quite a body of work connecting brain science, behavior, culture.
And we'll hit some, really interesting points, like how does a basic cry turn into something as complex as shame? Why is that back and forth play, that synchrony, so vital for their little nervous systems?
And the big questions around non-maternal care, too. What does the evidence actually say?
Right. So let's dive in. Where do we start with this emotional journey?
Let's start right at the beginning. The sheer speed of it all is, well, kind of mind-blowing in these first 24 months.
Okay, baseline. A newborn, they're incredibly responsive, right? But it's simple stuff initially.
Very simple, almost binary, you could say. It's reactive. Pain signals distress. Comfort signals pleasure. That's pretty much it at the very start.
Which makes sense for survival. You need to signal needs clearly.
Absolutely. If you're hungry or cold, you cry. If you're warm and fed, you're calm. Maybe even show pleasure. But what's fascinating is how quickly that simple system starts getting, well, much more complex, much more social.
Okay, so let's track that progression. #BD. The infant emotional timetable, first year.
Let's look at the first year, some key milestones. Let's start positive.
The social smile, that's a big one. Happens quite early, around 6 weeks.
Yeah, around 6 weeks. And crucially, it's not just, gas or a random muscle twitch. This smile is specifically triggered by seeing a human face.
So it's recognition, a social response.
Exactly. It's the baby saying, aha, a person, someone I can interact with. It's the beginning of that social partnership.
And then comes laughter, pure joy, usually around 3 to 4 months.
3-4 months. And it often seems tied to curiosity or maybe surprise, like something unexpected happens and they find it delightful. It shows more cognitive processing is going on.
Okay, so those are the early positive ones. What about the less pleasant but necessary emotions?
Right, the survival ones. Anger really starts to show up around 6 months.
Anger at 6 months. What triggers that?
Usually frustration. They can't reach a toy they want, or maybe their arms are being held down. Something is blocking their goal.
And that's considered healthy.
Yes, actually. At this stage, it's a healthy sign. It shows they're developing a sense of agency, like, I want that, and I'm trying to make something happen. It's a constructive signal, in a way.
Okay, interesting. How does that compare to sadness?
Sadness appears even earlier in the first few months. And it's different. It signals withdrawal, sort of giving up. And biologically, it's significant.
How so?
Well, the research shows that when infants are sad, their bodies produce more cortisol, the stress hormone.
Ah, so it's not just an emotional state, it's a physiological stressor. Wow.
Precisely. Prolonged sadness is genuinely stressful for their system. It underlines the need for responsive comforting.
Got it. And then there's fear. That comes later.
Yeah, fear emerges around 9 months usually. It's a response to specific things, people, objects, situations. It's a big cognitive jump because it involves anticipating something negative might happen.
And the sources mentioned 2 really common, almost universal types of fear around this age.
That's right. First, there's stranger wariness.
Right. The shift from smiling at everyone to suddenly being scared of new faces.
Exactly. Before 9 months, any friendly face might get a smile. After 9 months, an unfamiliar person approaching can trigger tears or a frightened look. It's that in-group, out-group recognition kicking in. Probably evolutionary.
Makes sense. And the second one, often harder on the parents.
Separation anxiety, oh yeah. The tears, the clinging, maybe even anger when a familiar caregiver leaves. It shows attachment is forming, which is good, but it can be really tough.
And it's normal, but there's a time limit.
There is. It's expected between, say, 8 months and maybe age 2 or 3. But if it stays really intense and debilitating after age 3, then it might signal an emotional disorder. Developmentally, it should lessen as they get more secure. #C, the toddler emotional shift. Second year.
Okay, so that's the first year. Moving into year 2, Toddlerhood. Things change again.
They refine. Anger and fear become less sort of global, more focused. They get better at knowing what to be angry or scared about.
And their expressions get more...
Yeah, definitely. Laughing gets louder, crying gets louder, and it's much more targeted. They're learning how to use these tools to communicate very specific things. And, of course,
Temper tantrums.
the infamous temper tantrums arrive. That classic toddler struggle, big desires, limited abilities, and not much impulse control yet. A key developmental marker, even if frustrating.
But the really big shift in the second year is these new complex emotions,
Yeah.
right? The self-conscious ones.
Yes, that's the huge leap. We start seeing things like pride, shame, embarrassment, disgust, even guilt. These are fundamentally different.
How are they different? What's needed for, say, shame that isn't needed for just basic anger?
It requires a sense of self and an understanding of what others expect social norms. Anger is often, I can't get what I want. Shame is more like, I did something wrong according to the rules, or even, I am bad because I did that.
So they need to be self-aware first, to realize they're the ones who acted.
Exactly. They have to see themselves as an individual who exists in a social world with standards. Pride is the flip side. I did something good. I achieved that. It's about evaluating the self against a standard.
That's a massive cognitive and social step. It lays the groundwork for morality, really.
It absolutely does. Understanding how your actions affect others and how they reflect on you.
Okay, this developing emotional landscape brings us straight to temperament. How does that fit in?
Temperament is like the raw material. It's defined as those inborn differences between individuals in their emotional reactivity, their activity levels, their ability to self-regulate. It's the biological core of personality, you could say.
Inborn, so genetic.
Largely genetic in origin, yes, but, and this is critical, it's epigenetic.
Meaning the environment shapes how those genes play out.
Precisely. Child rearing, experiences, culture, they all interact with that genetic blueprint to shape how temperament is actually expressed. Nature and nurture in constant dialogue.
Okay, and researchers usually talk about three main dimensions of temperament.
Yeah, three broad categories that seem pretty consistent. They're linked to brain patterns and behavior, and they do predict later personality traits to some extent.
What's the first one?
The first is effortful control. This is about the ability to regulate attention and inhibit responses. Can you focus? Can you stop yourself from doing something impulsive? Can you shift your attention when needed?
Sounds like a really important one. Linked to self-control later.
Very much so. High effortful control is associated with being able to manage emotions, pay attention in school, follow rules. Low effortful control means more impulsivity, maybe more acting out.
Okay, dimension two.
Negative mood. This captures babies who tend to be more fearful, angry, or generally unhappy. They react more intensely to stressors, maybe linked back to that cortisol response we talked about.
Right. And the third dimension sort of balances that out.
Exactly, exuberance. This describes kids who are really active, sociable, curious, maybe a bit intense, and definitely not shy. They approach the world with a lot of energy and positive anticipation.
So everyone has a mix of these three.
Pretty much. It's the specific blend and intensity of these dimensions that creates that unique temperamental style from the very beginning. Hashtag, tag, be the bond, a social awareness, the me.
And for those self-conscious emotions like pride and shame to emerge, you mentioned needing a sense of self. That's the next big milestone, the me.
Yes, the dawn of self-awareness. It's the realization that you are a distinct individual. Your body, your mind, your actions are separate from everyone else's. It seems obvious to us adults, but for an infant, it's a profound discovery.
How does that unfold? When do they figure this out?
Well, for the first few months, maybe 4 months or so, infants don't really seem to have a sense of self as separate. They might experience themselves almost as like part of their primary caregiver, a kind of merged existence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but then usually between 15 and 24 months, something clicks. That sense of me emerges. They start understanding they are an object in the world, someone who can be known.
And there's a classic test for this, isn't there? The mirror test.
The mirror self-recognition test, exactly. You sneakily put a dot of something like rouge or lipstick on a child's nose and then put them in front of a mirror.
What happens?
Before about 15 to 18 months, they often look at the mirror and touch the reflection's nose. They see another baby. But after 18 months or so, they'll typically reach up and touch their own nose.
Ah, because they recognize the reflection is them.
Precisely. They connect the image in the mirror with their own body. That's clear evidence of self-awareness. And that realization opens the door for pride, shame, embarrassment, all those emotions that require you to think about yourself.
Okay, so we have temperament as the individual starting point and this emerging sense of self. Now, how do they start building connections with others? Let's talk about synchrony.
Synchrony is fascinating. It's that coordinated, really rapid, smooth back and forth between a caregiver and an infant. Like a conversation, but often without words.
Like when a parent mimics the baby's coo and the baby coos back.
Exactly. Or matching facial expressions, vocal tone, even body movements. It gets more complex and elaborate over the first few months as both parent and baby get better at reading each other's cues.
So the parent often initiates by imitating the baby.
Often, yes. That imitation validates the baby's attempts to communicate and encourages more interaction. It's like saying, I see you, I hear you, keep going.
And this isn't just like cute interaction, it serves a purpose.
Oh, a crucial purpose. This dance helps infants learn emotional literacy, how to read faces, understand intentions. It builds the absolute foundation for social skills. It's practice for all future conversations.
It sounds really fundamental, like brain development level fundamental.
It absolutely is, and we know this partly because of the still face technique.
Right, explain that experiment. It sounds a bit harsh.
It is, for the baby. The procedure involves a caregiver interacting normally with the baby, lots of synchrony, then suddenly freezing their face, just a blank, unresponsive expression.
What do the babies do?
It's quite striking. First, they usually try harder to get a response. They might smile bigger, vocalize more, point. They try to re-engage the parent.
And when that doesn't work?
They become visibly distressed very quickly. They might look away, start fussing, crying, show signs of stress like changes in heart rate or cortisol. It's upsetting for them.
So the conclusion is?
Synchrony is experience expectant. The infant brain literally expects and needs this responsive interaction to develop normally. It's essential for both psychosocial well-being and even biological regulation. A lack of it is a serious red flag.
Okay, so synchrony is the interactive dance. What does that lead to? Attachment.
Exactly. Synchrony helps build the foundation for attachment, which is a more enduring, lasting emotional bond. Attachment eventually becomes the primary focus, shaping relationships throughout life.
Define attachment for us again.
It's that deep, lasting emotional connection one person has with another. It starts in infancy with caregivers and really provides the template for future close relationships, friendships, romantic partners.
And we see clear signs when attachment is developing, right? Universal behaviors.
Yes, two key ones: proximity seeking and contact maintaining.
Meeting.
Proximity seeking is just what it sounds like, trying to be close. Following the caregiver, crawling towards them, looking for them when they leave the room. Contact maintaining is the physical closeness, touching, snuggling, holding on, wanting to be picked up.
Survival instincts, basically. Keep the protector close.
Absolutely. These are deeply ingrained behaviors that helped keep vulnerable infants safe throughout human evolution.
And attachment develops in stages, too.
It does. There's pre-attachment in the first 6 weeks or so. Babies respond to people but don't show strong preference yet. Then attachment in the making from about 6 weeks to 8 months, where they start recognizing and preferring familiar caregivers.
And then the big one.
Classic secure attachment, roughly 8 months to 2 years. This is when that bond is really clear, separation anxiety peaks, and the caregiver is used as a secure base. After that, it evolves into attachment as a launching pad, where they explore more but check back, and the model keeps getting updated throughout life. Hashtag tag C measuring and types of attachment.
So if attachment is so important, how do researchers actually study it? You mentioned the strange situation earlier.
Right, the strange situation procedure. It's a standardized laboratory setup designed by Mary Ainsworth. It basically puts the infant through mild, controlled stress to observe their attachment behaviors.
What kind of stress?
It involves the infant, the caregiver, and a stranger in an unfamiliar playroom. The caregiver leaves the room, the stranger might try to interact, and then the caregiver returns. There are a few separations and reunions.
And what are the researchers watching for?
They're observing a few key things. How does the baby explore the toys when the caregiver is there? How much distress do they show when the caregiver leaves? And crucially, how do they react when the caregiver comes back?
Okay, and this leads to different classifications of attachment.
Yes. The most common and generally seen as the most adaptive is secure attachment, often called type B.
What does that look like?
A securely attached infant feels comfortable exploring when the caregiver is present. They'll likely be upset when the caregiver leaves, maybe cry. But when the caregiver returns, they actively seek comfort, they're easily soothed, and they get back to playing relatively quickly. The caregiver is a secure base and a source of comfort.
Makes sense. What about the insecure types?
There are a couple main types. One is insecure avoidant attachment, or type A.
Avoidant. How does that manifest?
These infants seem strangely independent. They might not interact much with the caregiver in the playroom. When the caregiver leaves, they might not seem distressed. And when the caregiver returns, they might actively avoid contact or ignore them.
Why would they do that?
The interpretation is often that they've learned their attempts to seek comfort might be rejected or ignored, so they suppress their need for closeness as a kind of defense mechanism.
That's sad. And these attachment styles, they have long-term implications.
They do correlate with later outcomes. Secure attachment is linked to better social skills, emotional regulation, and relationships later on. Insecure attachment is associated with a higher risk for various problems.
But you urged caution earlier.
Yes, it's really important. Correlation isn't causation. Insecure attachment might be a symptom of difficult circumstances like poverty, high family stress, parental mental health issues, rather than the direct cause of later problems. The context matters hugely.
And the Romanian orphanage studies really drove this point home about the importance of experience.
Absolutely. Those tragic circumstances where infants had minimal human interaction and no stable caregiver showed profound, lasting negative effects on development, even for children who were later adopted into loving homes. It powerfully demonstrated that early, consistent, responsive care is critical, potentially overriding even genetic predispositions for resilience in extreme cases. Experience sculpts the brain, especially early on. #TAG desocial referencing.
Okay, so once that attachment bond is there, kids start using it in another way, right?
Yeah.
Social referencing.
Yes, exactly. Social referencing is all about seeking emotional cues from others to figure out how to react to something uncertain or unfamiliar.
Like if a toddler encounters a new toy or animal, they look at mom or dad's face.
Precisely. They observe the caregiver's expression. Is it fear, pleasure, interest? And use that information as a guide. Is this thing safe? Should I approach it? Should I be wary? It's a constant, quick check-in.
Very efficient way to learn about the world.
Extremely. Saves them a lot of risky trial and error.
And do mothers and fathers play different roles here?
Often, yes, though there's overlap. Mothers, traditionally doing more primary caregiving, might do more of the comforting and conveying information through subtle expressions and tone. They're often the go-to for reassurance.
And fathers?
Research often shows fathers tend to engage in more stimulating physical play. They might elicit more laughter and excitement, and perhaps play a stronger role in teaching emotional regulation during play, like managing excitement or frustration. But the key thing is, synchrony, attachment, social referencing, these all happen with fathers too. Sometimes, depending on the family structure and involvement, fathers can be the primary attachment figure, or the bond can be just as strong. It's about the quality of the interaction, not the gender of the parent.
Okay, we've mapped out the what and when. Let's get into the why. How do the major developmental theories explain all this? Let's start with Freud.
Right. Classic psychodynamic theory. Freud focused on psychosexual stages. For the first 2 years, he highlighted two.
The oral stage.
In the first year, yes.
Right.
Pleasure centered around the mouth, sucking, feeding, exploring with the mouth. Potential conflict here could lead to an oral fixation later, supposedly.
And in the second year.
The anal stage. Focus shifts to the anus. Pleasure related to bowel control and toilet training. This is where Freud talked about potential conflicts leading to an anal personality, either overly messy or obsessively neat and controlled. These ideas are less emphasized now, but were foundational.
Okay. How did Erikson adapt this? His psychosocial theory seems more relevant here.
Erikson shifted the focus from sexual drives to social tasks or crises at each stage. He also proposed 2 key stages for these first 2 years.
The first one is?
Trust versus mistrust, covering infancy, roughly the first year. The fundamental task is developing basic trust in the world and in caregivers.
How is trust built or broken?
It's all about responsiveness. If the infant's basic needs, food, warmth, comfort, stimulation, are met consistently and reliably, they develop trust. They learn the world is a safe, predictable place. If care is inconsistent, neglectful, or harsh, they develop mistrust.
That feels very intuitive. What's the second stage for toddlerhood?
Autonomy versus shame and doubt. This covers the second year, roughly. The task here is for the toddler to develop a sense of independence and self-control over their own actions and body.
This is the me-do-it stage.
Exactly. Learning to walk, feed themselves, choose toys, and especially toilet training. If caregivers are supportive and allow reasonable independence within safe limits, the toddler develops autonomy. If they're overly critical, controlling, or shaming about failures, the child develops shame and doubt about their own abilities.
That really sets the stage for self-esteem, doesn't it?
Absolutely. These early experiences of trust and autonomy are considered crucial building blocks for a healthy personality.
Okay, shifting gears completely. What about behaviorism? Watson and others.
Behaviorists had a very different take. For them, it's all about learning through reinforcement and punishment. Emotions, personality, they're molded by the consequences of behavior.
So if a baby smiles and gets a positive reaction, they smile more.
Pretty much. If they have a tantrum and get what they want, the tantrum behavior is reinforced. Personality is seen as the sum total of learned responses. Social learning theory added to this, though.
How?
By emphasizing learning through observation, social referencing fits here. Infants watch others, see how they behave and what consequences follow, and learn by imitation. They don't need direct reinforcement. They can learn vicariously.
Okay. Now, cognitive theory offers another lens, focusing on thought processes. What's the key idea there?
The core concept is the working model. It's like an internal schema or set of assumptions that a child builds based on their early experiences, especially with caregivers.
A model of how relationships work.
Exactly. A child with a secure attachment develops a working model that says, people are generally reliable and responsive. I am worthy of care. A child with insecure attachment might develop a model saying, people are unpredictable or rejecting. I need to be careful or self-reliant.
And the crucial part, according to cognitive theory,
It's the child's interpretation of their experiences that shapes the working model, maybe even more than the objective events themselves. How they make sense of it matters.
can these working models change if you start with a negative one?
That's the hopeful part. Cognitive theory suggests, yes, they can. New experiences, especially significant positive relationships later in life, or even therapy that helps reinterpret past experiences, can lead to developing new, more adaptive working models. There's potential for change.
Finally, evolutionary theory. How does that explain infant emotions and bonds?
From an evolutionary perspective, it's all about survival and reproduction. Ancient emotions are seen as adaptations that promoted survival.
How so?
Things like crying signal needs to caregivers. The social smile and synchrony help build bonds that ensure protection. Attachment behaviors, proximity seeking, contact maintaining kept vulnerable infants close to adults who could feed and protect them. These traits were selected for over millennia because they helped infants survive to pass on their genes.
And this theory also highlights allocare.
Yes, allocare the care of children by individuals other than the biological parents, like grandparents, siblings, other group members. Evolutionary theory posits that this cooperative breeding was essential for human success.
Why essential?
It freed up parents, especially mothers, for other vital tasks like foraging or resource gathering, while ensuring infants still received care. It suggests that relying solely on the mother for all care is maybe not our species' historical norm. Shared care was likely crucial.
Okay, these theories help explain why caregiving is so vital, and cultures approach it differently. Let's talk about proximal versus distal parenting styles.
Right, these are two broad patterns observed across cultures. Proximal parenting involves a lot of physical closeness. Think frequent holding, carrying, co-sleeping, quick physical comforting.
Common in many non-Western cultures.
Often, yes. Cultures that emphasize interdependence and group harmony tend to lean proximal.
And distal parent.
That involves more physical distance. Caregivers talk face-to-face, provide toys for stimulation, encourage self-soothing, but there's less holding and carrying. This is more common in cultures emphasizing independence, like many Western societies.
Do these styles lead to different outcomes?
The research suggests they might foster slightly different skills early on. Proximal parenting might lead to toddlers who are more compliant, perhaps less aware of themselves as totally separate entities initially, but very attuned to social cues.
And distal.
Distal parenting might foster earlier self-awareness, maybe more independence, but potentially less immediate obedience, as the focus is on individual action.
Is one better than the other?
Not inherently. Both styles seem to work well within their cultural context. They prepare children for the values and expectations of their specific society. The key isn't the style itself, but the responsiveness within that style. #B, consensus on infant care.
That makes sense. It must be hard to research this without cultural bias creeping in, though.
It is incredibly difficult. Everyone tends to think their way is the natural or best way.
But despite the cultural variations and biases, is there some common ground? Things experts generally agree on about good infant care.
Yes, thankfully. Across the board, research points to 4 pretty solid principles.
Okay, well, what's number one?
Mutual attachment to one or, importantly, several familiar caregivers is crucial. Infants need stable, predictable relationships.
Makes sense. Number two.
Quality of care matters immensely, regardless of who provides it or where. Whether it's mom at home, dad, grandma, or a daycare center, the quality of the interactions is what counts.
Okay. Third.
Babies need warm and responsive caregivers. They need adults who tune in to their signals, respond promptly and sensitively, and provide comfort and appropriate stimulation.
And the fourth principle.
Frequent changes and instability in care are problematic. Having lots of different caregivers or inconsistent routines can disrupt attachment formation and be stressful for the infant. Stability is key. ###C, the debate on non-maternal care.
So those 4 points have broad agreement.
Yeah.
But the debate still exists around non-maternal care, daycare, nannies, etc.
Right. Oh, yes. Huge debate, often very emotional. Cultures and even experts within cultures disagree on who should be providing care, especially for infants.
What does the research actually show about the impact of, say, daycare on psychosocial development?
Well, the finding that often surprises people is this. Psychosocial outcomes, including whether a child forms a secure attachment, seem to be influenced much more by the mother's sensitivity and warmth when she is with the child than by the sheer number of hours spent in non-maternal care.
Really? So it's not just about quantity of time with mom.
It seems quality trumps quantity here. A warm, responsive parent who uses high-quality non-maternal care can still foster secure attachment. Conversely, a parent who is present full-time but is stressed, depressed, or unresponsive may struggle to build that secure bond.
So again, it comes back to the quality of care, whoever provides it.
Exactly. Quality is the critical factor. ###deep. Essential characteristics of high-quality daycare.
Okay, so if non-maternal care is used and quality is key, what does high-quality care actually look like for infants and toddlers? What should parents look for?
The research is pretty clear on the essential ingredients. There's a checklist, really.
Give us the highlights.
First, adequate attention to each infant. That means low caregiver to infant ratios. One adult can't be warm and responsive to 10 crying babies at once. You need enough staff, maybe 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 for infants.
Right. What else?
Encouragement of development. The environment should be stimulating with age-appropriate activities that foster language, cognitive, and motor skills.
Right.
It shouldn't just be warehousing kids.
Safety,
Exactly.
obviously.
Attention to health and safety is paramount. Cleanliness, safe equipment, proper procedures.
What about the caregivers themselves?
Professional caregivers. This means people with some training in child development who see it as a profession, not just a temporary job. Lower staff turnover is crucial for that stability we talked about.
And the overarching quality.
They need to be warm and responsive. Do they smile? Do they talk to the babies? Do they hold them and comfort them when needed? Do they seem genuinely engaged? That warmth is maybe the most important piece. It echoes those consensus principles, #outro.
Okay, that brings us almost to the end of this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from those first simple reflexes to the complex, self-conscious emotions like pride and guilt emerging in toddlerhood.
We've looked at temperament as the inborn foundation, but also the crucial role of learned interactions like synchrony and the importance of social referencing. And repeatedly, the message comes through. Stable, responsive, warm caregiving is fundamental.
Whether that care is proximal or distal, from a parent or another caregiver, those quality elements seem universal for building secure attachments and healthy working models of relationships.
And we touched on how cognitive theory allows for those working models to change, offering hope even when early experiences weren't ideal.
Right, and we brought in the evolutionary perspective, reminding us that allocare, shared caregiving, has deep roots in our human story.
It's likely part of why our species was so successful.
So let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on, connecting some of these threads. We talked about allocare being essential for human evolution, requiring cooperation within a group. And we talked about these complex, self-conscious emotions like guilt and shame emerging early, around the time toddlers become more mobile and, frankly, more capable of disrupting group harmony.
Where are you going with this?
Well, here's the question. Could the early emergence of guilt and shame be evolutionarily linked to the demands of allocare and group cooperation? Were these powerful social emotions part of the toolkit that helped ensure individuals regulated their behavior, considered others, and upheld the social cohesion needed for everyone, especially vulnerable infants, to survive in that shared care context?
So guilt and shame not just as individual feelings, but as evolutionary adaptations for living in cooperative groups.
That's definitely something to think about. Our deepest feelings tied to our social survival.
Exactly. Something for you to mull over.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.